What's up YouTube? KS Gun Guy here. Thanks for joining me today as always. So I've been doing a series of product reviews, and these products are geared to enhance your experience, whether it be from a concealed carry standpoint, home defense, or just going to the range and having a really good time. Now a lot of these products are a very minor enhancement or just go along with what your gun is already doing. So there's not really too much of a measurable difference, although again, take that for what it's worth, merely opinion. However, there are other products that really truly change the complete feel of the firearm, and that brings us to today. One product or enhancement that you can make to your firearms, especially from a handgun standpoint, is the trigger. Now, there are a lot of really good trigger companies out there. I've done a review previously on another company. It's a fantastic company, great triggers, but I've also spent a fair amount of time over the years with Apex triggers. Now, I've got a couple of guns here in front of me right now, in front of you as well, one of which is the Glock 19C, and this is sort of a test bed for different products, and quite a few of my Gen 3, Gen 4 Glocks that I've had on the channel have been just the exact same case. And in this case, I've got several different products in here, one of which being the Apex flat trigger, and then also a ZEV race connector and the Apex safety plunger or striker block, whatever you want to call it. And I seem to have found kind of a sweet spot for the trigger, at least for my hands, for my shooting style with this. And I've really come to appreciate this Apex trigger. Now, if you know my style of shooting, I do not use the pad of my finger. I actually have to wrap my finger around a little bit because my fingers are kind of long, and so this is just more comfortable. I've been doing it for a long time, so just used to it. It works pretty well for me. So this flat trigger seems to do very well. Now the dynamics of this trigger have changed dramatically. So when I pull through, it's just a pull straight through. There's really no wall with this trigger, which I actually want for this particular gun. So it pulls straight through, about a 4-pound pull, and then there's your snap or your break, and then your reset right there and back out to the start. And I've really found that this is just a great combination for the trigger. It feels good, it shoots well, it just works really well for this. So I've enjoyed this quite a bit. Now, a lot of you know that Apex is probably most known for their Smith & Wesson triggers. They've been doing triggers for the 1.0, whether it be full size or even the shields, that sort of thing. And they've had a lot of success with those triggers because, as we all know, with the original or factory hinged trigger design, there's a lot to be desired. Not only from a trigger feel standpoint, but also changing the dynamics, whether it be from a pre-travel or an over-travel standpoint. But that brings us to the Smith & Wesson 2.0 compact. Apex just came out with the flat-faced trigger for the 2.0, just recently announced. They've had a couple of other triggers that have worked in this gun, but the flat face seems to be the most popular, and I was very excited to have an opportunity to give this a try early on and see what I thought about it. And I have to say, it is an incredible change. I said several times in the previous videos, whether it be with the compact or the full size, that there were several problems with the trigger, not only with that hinge design, but also the fact that there was an incredible amount of grit, especially in the pull of the trigger. I mean, it just wasn't a clean trigger. It didn't feel good. And if there was really one change to the gun, it would have to be the trigger. So that brings us to this flat-faced trigger, but this is also the forward sear set and full kit. So we'll be talking a little bit about all of the different changes that come with this particular kit right here. But let's go ahead and take a look at the trigger for a moment or two. So from a pull standpoint, so we'll go ahead and deactivate the safety lever. And we've got just a couple of millimeters of travel right there, maybe one and a half, maybe 2. I'm not a scientist. These aren't exact measurements, of course. But then we do get to a wall. And once we get to our wall, there's our break. And it's short, it's crisp, it's clean. It just feels good. And then from a reset standpoint, there's your reset right there. Very little travel whatsoever, and then you're back out to the start. And the reset is audible and it's tactile. And of course, I will do this again. There's your uptake, very clean, no grit. There's your break, and then your reset is right there, and that reset just feels fantastic. One of the coolest parts about this particular trigger, at least for me, because of my shooting style here, wrapping my finger around, This trigger doesn't travel quite as far back into the trigger housing. It just keeps, the original trigger rather, just kept going back almost to the very end right here. And this trigger definitely keeps it further forward, so it shortens that length of travel, and it also increases the distance, at least from the back of the hand to my finger right here. So for my shooting style, wrapping my finger around, it just was the ideal solution, at least for this particular firearm, and it feels absolutely fantastic. Now, one of the other advantages or designs with this type of trigger, because of the leverage of it, it can help push your finger down just a little bit. And of course, there's a little lip down there at the bottom, like the Glock trigger as well. So as your finger is further and further down on this trigger, it reduces that pull weight. So down at the very bottom, I was measuring about 4.5 pounds and measuring in about the middle of the trigger about 5.5 pounds. So there's a dramatic difference between the two, which is just fantastic. Now, one of the nice things about the full kit, it actually comes with a variety of different parts to it. Not only your flat-faced forward set trigger right here, but it also comes with the forward set sear, as well as another piece of metal that sits right beside that sear. Make sure you use the Apex model and not the original model. The original model will not work with this trigger, so make sure you pay attention to that. But then it also comes with that ultimate striker block, or safety plunger, I like to call it, in there, as well as the spring for that. And that definitely cleans up that trigger quite a bit. It has two different trigger return springs, so you can really dial in that return, which is right here, to adjust the weight on that. So that's really cool that they give you those options. It also comes with several different sear springs as well to dial in that weight. Now I'm using the duty or standard Apex sear spring in here, so that is going to come in right around 5 pounds or so, or 5.5 pounds rather, or so. But you can again dial in that, and you can also use the factory springs as well. So it just depends on how heavy of a trigger pull that you want it. Now, you do have to remove or at least slide the rear sights partially off to change out that striker block or plunger. It does come with a Talon tool to help you do that, just to keep everything in place while you put your sight back on, which is great. And then it comes with a little slave pin to help you get that trigger return spring and everything back into the gun for your reinstallation. So they've really kind of thought of everything to make it as easy on you as possible. Now, I had my gunsmith do this. It was just easier, and I kind of wanted an expert to put this in to make sure I didn't screw anything up, even though I'm comfortable doing my own work and certainly do it on the Glocks. One nice thing about the 2.0 Smiths, they are actually push pins in here rather than roll pins, which is fantastic. Thank you, Smith & Wesson, for doing that. Makes it a little bit easier on all of us. So once again, the flat face trigger full kit right here from Apex, and I have to say again, if there's a change, at least to this particular gun right here, it was the trigger, and it made a world of difference. I passed this around to everybody at Centerfire Shooting Sports when I did my testing on this, people that work there and some other people just shooting, and everybody thought it was just an incredible difference. We were testing some of their other 2.0 factory ones and doing some side-by-side comparisons, and there's just a world of difference between the two. And of course, Apex offers products for other firearms as well, Sig Sauer, Walther, the list goes on and on. So I have to say, I would recommend doing yourself a favor and giving some different triggers a try, especially Apex, and especially when it comes to the M&P 2.0. It makes a world of difference. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about this, what your comments are, if you have any experience with any Apex triggers, especially in the Smith & Wessons. I'd love to hear all of that, or if you have any other recommendations as well. I'm always looking forward to those. Once again, thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.